Okay, so far we've been graphing equations of lines to help get a visual representation of what's happening in a situation. But now we're going to actually practice writing equations of lines. Because a lot of times we want to write equations of lines and do something mathematically with that equation to help figure out what may be happening in a situation. So what we're going to start with is we're going to write equations using our point-slope form. So just as a reminder to you, here's our point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Now what we are going to do is we're going to leave the y and the x where it is, and we're going to replace y1 and x1 with a point. Then we are going to replace m with our slope. And that's how we're going to write our equations. So write the equation of a line with a slope of -4. So I'm going to put this in the m spot. And through the point 6, 11. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start with my point slope form. Y minus, now I'm going to write the y value of my point. And the y value of my point is 11 equals our slope, -4, times x minus the x value of my point. And there's the equation of our line. That's it. So we're going to practice another one. So write the equation of a line with a slope of 1/6. So this is our m. And through the point 5, 1. So I'm going to do y minus the y value of my point, which is 1, equals my slope, 1/6, times x minus the x value of my point. And there's our equation. Now some of your equations will look a little differently because some of them will have a point like 1, -2, and maybe a slope of 3/2. So what you would do is you do y minus the y value of my point. And so now we're getting that double negative happening there. So you want to take a chance and to go ahead and change that. The double negatives turn positive. Equals my slope times x minus my x value. And there's our equation. So just another example of what would happen if you end up with those double negatives, how it turns it positive. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this a step further, because there's not a lot of work to them. So we want to look at, okay, what happens now when they don't tell you the slope? So again, we've got our point slope form, but we also have the formula for calculating the slope. And so now our problems are going to turn a little bit more complicated, because now they're going to tell us 2 points on the line. And what we're going to have to do is calculate the slope first and then write the equation of the line. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to write the equation of the line through the points 2, -3, and 4, 1. So to calculate slope, I start by subtracting my y's. So I'm going to do m equals, that's my slope, 1 minus -3, so I subtract those y's, over 4 minus 2. So on the top there, these negatives cancel out, so now I have 4 over 2, which gives me a slope of 2. Now at this point, I have an option. I can write my equation with one of my points. I only have to pick one. So if I were to pick the first point here, then my equation would look like y minus my y value equals my slope times x minus my x value. Then I would go ahead and take care of those double negatives, and that would be the equation of my line. But I could have picked the second point, and I can write my equation with that one. So I have a second option, another equation I could have written. Y minus my y value equals my slope times x minus my x value. What you'll find is that even though the equations look different, when you graph them, they will be the exact same line. As long as you calculated your slope correctly and wrote your equation correctly, you'll be fine. They will be the same line. And that's okay. Because a lot of times in the real world, not everyone's called the same. So at home, my kids call me Mom. At school, I get called Miss Settle. At my parents' house, I get called Mandy. And out with other teachers that I know, I get called Amanda. Lots of different names, same person. Same thing with these lines. Different equations, but they're still the same line, and that's okay. So we'll move on to our next one. We're going to go ahead and calculate the slope first. So I'm going to do y2 minus y1 over, and now I'm going to do my x's, x2 minus x1. I'm going to take care of those double negatives. So negative 2 plus 3, or I can look at it backwards, 3 minus 2 gives me 1. 5 minus 10 gives me negative 5. And there's my slope. 1 over negative 5 or negative 1/5. Either way, they're the same. And now I get to pick which equation I'm going to work with. So if I use which point. So if I use my first point, I would go y minus the y value of my point equals my slope times x minus the x value of my point. I take care of the double negatives, and there's my equation. Or I could go to the second one, and I can write my equation with that point. So y minus the y value of my point equals my slope times x minus the x value of my point. Take care of my double negatives, and I've shown my two options. Okay, so now we go to the next one. Same idea. I'm going to look at my y's, and I'm going to calculate my slope. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add a line, change the sign. Former negative dropper here. And I hate making mistakes with my negatives. Drives me crazy. So this becomes negative 18 over negative 6. The negatives cancel. And 18 divided by 6 gives me 3. So there's our slope. Now we're in prime situation to write the equation of our line. I can use my first point. So y minus 15, so the y value, equals my slope times x minus my x value of 2. So now I can go to my next one. Now keep in mind, on your assignments, you only have to write one equation. I just want to show you how you would do it for each one. So my second option, or the second correct answer, would be y minus negative 3, because that's the y value of my point, equals my slope times x minus the x value of my point. Take care of your double negatives, and there's our two equations. So we've got one more example, and then we're done for today. So now I'm going to go ahead and calculate my slope, y2 minus y1, over x2 minus x1. So on the top, I'm going to have negative 2, on the bottom, negative 7. Negatives cancel, so I have positive 2 over 7. And now I can go ahead and write my first equation using the first point. So y minus 4 equals, I wrote that wrong, I apologize. I just realized that I wrote my slope with a 2 on the bottom, because I was still thinking 2 instead of 7. So this is going to be 2/7 is our slope, and then x minus my x value. Now you can leave it in this form, though usually if you have a 0 in here, it's best to simplify. So x minus 0 is x. So this is really y minus 4 equals 2/7 x. So you could leave it like that. Or you could even move over the 4, add 4 to both sides. And then you have it in what we call slope-intercept form, which is good for graphing. So just one of your options. Our next option would be y minus the y value of our point equals my slope times x minus the x value of my point. And again, changing those double negatives. Again, both equations totally valid. In fact, we've got 3 valid equations. Well, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 valid equations. All totally correct. The same type, the same line. So, okay, so that's it for today. Next time we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at, okay, now that I have it in point slope form, how do we transform it to slope intercept form?